Hello, my name is Ben Hay. First, we are going to look at what a block is. A block is a pre-written answer to arguments that they expect their opponents to make. In a rebuttal, your goal is to dismantle your opponent's case by pointing out at every possible opportunity how wrong they are about everything, and you're going to need to do this by using blocks. Why use a block? A block is an easy way to answer your opponent's arguments and can win you the round by essentially eliminating their argument and keeping your argument valid, and so you win the round. The second speaker of each team uses blocks during their rebuttal to answer the opponent's arguments. When making blocks, the first thing that you need to look to is finding out what to research. When you're looking at what to research, you have to look at the main topics that people are going to be running and what you expect for what you're going to go up against during the tournament. This is an example of blocks. Blocks are usually formatted with first the A2, meaning answer to, and then the tagline of the contention that you're trying to respond to. After that, you're going to go through the points with usually the tagline of what you're saying as the analysis, and then the card after that showing the statistics behind that, the claim, then the evidence. Usually you're going to have multiple responses to one argument, so you can go line by line in their contention and dismantle each piece of evidence that they use in their contentions. This makes it easier for the judge to flow your rebuttal and increases the odds that you win the round. This is an example of blocks and briefs that are used to help research other blocks and for topics that you need to have. Briefs are not supposed to be used for actually in the round. They're just there for you to help you research. This is another example of blocks being made, and it's showing that you can literally just read the blocks line by line to answer the opponent's arguments. This is an example of a block that can be used as a general overview of the round, and unless they respond to this block, then they won't be able to win the round, and thus the blocks are very important to use.
Two important openings before we get into their case. The first is that no country in history has ever feasibly and in a sustainable way reduced poverty absent industrialization, absent a shift from an agricultural economy to an industrialized economy. And we're going to show you exactly why that is exclusive to a world in which globalization is occurring. But second of all, look to the ILO. They explain that 240 million jobs have been created as a result of comparative advantage being taken advantage of and has opened up jobs for people in the developing world. That's going to be critical because these are all people who now have comparatively more means to buy food and basic necessities than before. With that, let's get into their first contention. They talk about drugs, a lot of issues here. The first is that this is referring to globalization, not economic globalization. They themselves tell you that the facilitation of the drug trade has to do with communication, not anything to do with removing trade barriers or barriers to financial investment. At that point, it's not topical. But second of all, there are disincentives to operating in the drug trade when you open up legal trade avenues. Reducing tariffs specifically means that now people have a disincentive to take the risk of illicit trading and are more likely to not operate in these drug cartels. And third of all, if you look to Becker of the Wall Street Journal, he explains that their entire case is explicable by alternate causality. He explains that now drug cartels are making more money because there's a smaller supply since people are disincentivized from the illegal channels, and that's why it appears as though there's an expansion, but actually it's just alternately causal. Let's go to their second contention, where they talk about fueling the engine. First problem, they never tell you how much prices are going up by, so we have no idea how much civil conflict is going to be exacerbated by what extent. There's no way to weigh this contention. But second of all, they literally can't give you examples. They're just like, civil conflict happens. Conflict over resources always happens, and we're telling you that it's not at all unique to a world in which globalization happens, particularly when now things are being traded for at a lower price. It's easier to get more commodities since not every country has to be self-sustaining as they have to be in a protectionist world. So we would argue that conflict is mitigated, and that's a reason to vote for us on that contention, not for them. Now, let's talk about their third contention. They talk a lot about how even if long-term things are going to decrease and there's a long-term reduction in poverty, that's not going to matter. First of all, we contend to you that that really matters because it means that every increase in poverty they talk about is nominal and doesn't have any long-term impact. But second of all, look to the United Nations. They explain that the capital that foreign direct investment is supplying to these countries is allowing them to modernize their agricultural industries. That means A, that efficiency in these countries is going up, which means that more people have access to food, but B, now people don't all have to work in the agricultural industry, which is endemic to places with poverty. They can shift to the industrial place. This is the crux of our case. Without industrialization, by trying to have a protectionist economy that is primarily agrarian, it is literally impossible to shift out of poverty in a sustainable way. So qualitatively, every single thing they're talking about is not only short-term, but it's really irrelevant to the big picture on poverty. Next, they tell you that speculative investment is a terrible thing. Bubbles are not inherently bad. A lot of the times, bubbles can drive investment in an area and have long-term benefits. The dot-com bubble, for example, that wasn't really a bad thing because it led to a lot of startups later on and eventually led to a huge amount of technological revolutions in the world. So we would tell you the popping of a bubble is a short-term impact, but in the long-term consideration, there are more benefits for absolutely everybody. Finally, they're basically telling you that we're depressing prices for food, and that's a bad thing. And then earlier on in their contention, they're telling you that food prices are getting higher. They need to pick one, but we would tell you that yes, food prices are going down because there's more efficient production, and now there's more trade. That specifically means that poor people can more easily afford this. So just in terms of that, just in terms of their access to things which make them poor, or their lack of access, that is being mitigated under a world with globalization. So ultimately, every single thing in their case they're giving you is short-term, it's only affecting certain countries like Peru or Bolivia. That's all they can substantiate their contentions with, and we're telling you the comparative advantage overwhelmingly benefits many countries. And remember, it is a dynamic comparative advantage. They don't all have to do this at once. For those reasons, we're very proud to affirm. Thank you.